What are some of the risks that you see entrepreneurs maybe unaware of as they're looking to grow or scale a venture? What's real?
I'll give you a real one that just happened in the last 48 hours. What I can tell you is with generative AI and all the new technology, everyone's a potential target.
So when you were the earlier stage of starting, what did you notice that made you think there was a real opportunity?
In that space, there's a lot of over-promising and under-delivering. Took a while, but it ultimately worked.
You mentioned entrepreneurs need rose-colored glasses in some ways. You need a sense of hope. What gives you hope?
Let me take it down to a micro level. Spoiler alert, I read the end of the book and I know how it ends.
My name is Nick Madden, CEO of Scent. This is the Breaking the Barrier podcast, where we break the barrier between faith and business for Catholic entrepreneurs. I'm here at the Spirit Juice headquarters in their studio with an awesome team helping us put this together. And I got to sit down with David Niccolini. He is an incredible man. He's built multiple businesses, has a wonderful family. We got to dive into risk mitigation, what that looks like for Catholic entrepreneurs, what redeemed business and capital looks like, and practical tips for you building your business. We hope you enjoy. David, thank you for being here with me and spending some time on the Breaking the Barrier podcast. You've built a number of different ventures in enterprise risk management, and you've coached dozens of entrepreneurs. You said by count 8 businesses you've started, 4 of which are still running and cruising today. Mm-hmm. And I'm just grateful that you're taking time with me. So thanks for being here.
Thanks, Nick. Appreciate it.
One of the areas that you're coaching a variety of entrepreneurs now, and you're still involved in business yourself. Mm-hmm. I'd love to just go back to some of the earlier businesses that you started. Maybe pick one. There's multiple that come to mind. But how did you first get into entrepreneurship, and what market opportunities were you seeing, and what were you recognizing in the world that needed to have a solution?
Well, what happened to me was I didn't realize it at the time, but in retrospect, I can see now that I was actually an intrapreneur before I became an entrepreneur. And basically what that meant was I had a job, I had benefits, I was working for a conglomerate that was doing over $1 billion a year in revenue. But I was asked to kind of create a new division, create a new brand, a new division, a new go-to-market strategy for a certain type of service. And after I'd done that for several years, there's a lot more to the story, but after I'd done that for several years, one of my clients that I had sold out of that division actually approached me, and he had been working for a billionaire family office in Manhattan. He was their global director of security, and he approached me and he said, "Hey, I've left the family office." He had worked for a couple of different family offices over about a 15-year period. He said, "I've left the family office world. I'm starting a business. We're raising capital. We think you would be a perfect addition to the founder table. Are you interested?" And so that was really, I don't want to say I was pulled into entrepreneurship. I had the experience of being the intrapreneur, and then I was invited to the founder table. And it's funny because I knew this person very well. We liked each other. He had been my client. We had done work together for several years. But then I said, "Oh, well, you said that there are other founders. Like, who are the other founders?" And he's like, "Well, we've got a director of Secret Service and a former director of Secret Service, and we have a former U.S. Senate Sergeant at Arms." And I'm like, "I'm in." Yep. Like, yes, the answer is yes. I want to be at that founder table.
I love that. That's an awesome start. And it's cool because I think a lot of entrepreneurs find themselves with an expertise in a domain, mm-hmm. and then they think, "Oh, I could apply that expertise in this field outside of that." Yeah. So as you got started, and you had this $1 billion company that you'd learned excellence in some ways at, and
also certain things not to do, but yes, right. Excellence and what not to do, but yes.
Did that translate pretty easily to the world of entrepreneurship, or was it more painting on a blank canvas? What was your experience like in those early days?
Early days, they were survival. I can remember the feeling very well, both the excitement of it, but also the anxiety of it, and the way in which that the revenue counter, every month would go back to zero. So much of our work in the early years was not long-term contract work. It was all project-based.
Which company was this?
This is Torchstone,
Okay.
which is Torchstone is a security consultancy, risk mitigation consultancy, focuses primarily on physical security, things like executive protection, event security, also investigations, due diligence, et cetera. Works primarily in 3 different areas. One, in multinational corporate security, which is a very well-established space. Also in family office. Obviously, my partner had lived in the family office space. That was one of the areas that we wanted to be in, working for high net worth and ultra high net worth individuals and families. And then the third area, for lack of a better phrase, special projects, right? So things that aren't always happening, but come up on a regular basis, like the Olympics or the Super Bowl or things like that.
Yes. This is so interesting because I don't think that's a world people think about often until they're in it at all. So I hadn't thought about it until, preparing for this, and on our previous conversations, it kind of opened my eyes to it. So let me just play it back from a really naive standpoint. Somebody in a family office might want protection for themselves and their family, and they would contract with you to set up round-the-clock security.
Yeah, sometimes it's static security at a residence. Sometimes it's dynamic security, which is basically security in movement, right? And that could be to the other side of town to go to dinner, or it could be to the other side of the world to go on a safari or a vacation or a business trip. But yeah, they, enterprise risk management, and again, it's not something that people think about, but it's basically all the things that an entity, be it a family office or a corporation or a nonprofit or an individual, all the things that somebody does to try to stay out of trouble. Sometimes you're talking about regulatory trouble, legal trouble, compliance trouble, but sometimes you're talking about, a very wealthy individual who's worried about their children being kidnapped, right, at school. We're sitting here and we're recording, and right now there's an investigation going on out west with Samantha Guthrie's mother, who looks like has been abducted. And it's unclear, at this early stage why or what's going on there. But my mind, as soon as I saw that headline, was like, I wonder if this is some sort of kidnap and ransom situation. Might not be. Again, this just broke within the last 24 hours, but that's where my mind goes to.
Thanks for joining us. I know you hear this all the time from all different podcasters, but if you could like and follow us, it's a big deal. It helps us make more content like this. More people see it. We beat the algorithm. We can reach more Catholic entrepreneurs, help you break the barrier, bring your faith into business, and build something beautiful for the Lord. So please like and subscribe. It'll go a long way. Super appreciate it. I'd like to take a moment to share about our upcoming Sent Summit. It's going to be in Denver from September 8th to the 11th. And we're going to be gathering 600 top Catholic entrepreneurs, investors, and philanthropists to come together for conversation, for speaking, for community. We have great speakers lined up. We've got Arthur Brooks kicking off as one of the keynotes. We'd love to see you there. If you're interested, check out our website to learn more details. I just want to give a special thank you to Rob and the Spirit Juice team for letting us be in the studio, shoot with this awesome place. If you're an entrepreneur and you're leading a business and need awesome video, media, production support, this is a great place to go. If you're in the church and you're thinking, hey, how can I show people our mission, bring it to life with something beautiful? They're the team to do it. Thanks, Spirit Juice. Appreciate you. Yes. So this is interesting because that's the world of risk mitigation from a super holistic perspective. I mean, you're talking everything from cybersecurity to physical health. Yeah. Within that, how has that formed your worldview, and has that helped? Has that helped as your faith played a role in that? Let's dive into the psychology behind that a bit.
Sure. Let's start before the psychology. Let's just get into the theology of it, right? As believers, as Catholics. We believe in good and evil, right? We believe in spiritual warfare. We believe in God and we believe in Satan. And there are bad people in this world. And they do bad things on a regular basis. And so yes, from a Catholic perspective or a theological perspective, I like to think that the work that I've done in enterprise risk management is kind of being that protector, and trying to do God's will to protect good people. But yeah, from a psychological perspective, I mean, my children are pseudo adults now, and I say pseudo adults because they're adult size and they look like adults, but they don't necessarily always act like it. But all the time growing up, I was always hammering into their heads situational awareness, right? Like to start thinking about no matter where you are, what you're doing, what's happening around you. Perfect example of this that everybody can understand is, we're here in the Chicago area, but, go to LA, go to Manhattan, walk through the streets, see how many people are buried in their phones. How situationally aware are they about what's going on around them? And so I always, from a psychological perspective, I always tried to impart that to my clients, to myself, to my family, but not to the point of paranoia, not to the point of paralysis. That does no one any good. But to the point of being aware of what's going on and almost having a plan in your head about like, if this were to happen, what would I do? That kind of visualization that athletes often talk about, right? It's like, before Michael Jordan scores 49 points, he's already, in the locker room, he's done it in his head before he actually goes out and does it on the court.
Yes. So when you were going back to the earlier stage of starting, pick a business, but what did you notice that made you think there was a real opportunity in the space? Was it, what was driving you, internal motivation? You had a killer founding group who was a pretty impressive group that you're like, hey, I want to be in the room with. But what did you notice in the market, or what did you see that made that?
In that space, there is there's a lot of over promising and under delivering. And so intentionally from the start of that company, we realized how important our brand, our not only the company brand and reputation, but also the personal brand and reputation, especially in the early days of survival, not knowing whether or not this was going to last 6 months, a year, 2 years, what have you, and saying like, what am I going to do next, right? And that was a real driving force of that company that now 15 years plus is still going strong and still growing, and it's been on the Inc. 5000 multiple times over the years. That was kind of like, if you go all the way back, it was like, what is our niche? What is our differentiator? Why would someone hire a startup in this space for this very sensitive, discrete, important stuff? Why would, and we said, because we are going to under promise and over deliver, and we're going to do that on every single project and every scope of work that we get the honor to execute on. And took a while. Took a while, but it ultimately worked.
What did under promising look like and over delivering in that space?
Well, in that space, I think, again, even if you've never heard of this space before, if you never thought of this space before, or if you have thought of this space, it's like, oh, that's just a mall cop, right? Or a security guard or whatever. It's much, much more than that. But even if this is all new to you, everybody's seen movies, right? You've seen Zero Dark 30. You've seen all these movies about Black Hawk Down, right? Special forces, military. You've seen Born Identity. You've seen all these different things. And unfortunately, some of that kind of like unrealistic Hollywood persona, sometimes that's actually what the clients want. It's what they're looking for. It's what they ask for, right? I mean, and I've worked with a lot of Navy SEALs over the years, and some of them are friends. But after Zero Dark 30, it's all anybody wanted was a SEAL. I got to have a SEAL. And, so under promising and over delivering would be having that honest dialogue with a family and saying, why do you want a Navy SEAL? And it's like, oh, well, we met this guy and he told all these stories and it's so incredible in the work that they do and, and their service to the country. And I'm like, that's all true. Navy SEALs are trained to kill people and break things. Why do you want them protecting your children as they go to school? Like, that doesn't necessarily make sense. You want someone who's actually trained in protective intelligence and executive protection, with a lot of soft skills, right? To be able to go to like UN General Assembly and have all the meetings that you need to have or what have you. So
Yeah.
I'm kind of going down a rabbit hole here, but I think you get the point.
I think this is super interesting. Like for folks who it's the world you were shaped in, you added a lot of value to it. You're coming out of this kind of mindset of risk management that really became, something you operate from. So zooming back, and you now see lots of different industries as a coach. So you've got this industry that you're an expert at risk management, and you can kind of take that lens and apply it. What are some of the risks that you see entrepreneurs maybe be unaware of as they're looking to grow or scale a venture? Like, these are patterns that you see come up, and they're unaware of these sorts of things, and you've seen it actually come to fruition. There's, real risks and fake risks. So what's real?
So I'll give you a real one that just happened in the last 48 hours. So I run an entrepreneur group through my parish, and we had breakfast. That was yesterday. Yeah, Monday. We had kind of fellowship and breakfast, and we're talking. And one of the members running a small business, subcontractor to NASA, has only a few employees, and was going, and because he's such a small business, and so he is the CEO as well as the janitor and everything in between. So at the end of the year, what is he doing? He's getting his taxes together. He's reconciling his books and everything else. And he says, what is this wire out of $24,000? His QuickBooks account was hacked, and he was able to catch it before the money actually was wired out of the bank. But they got into his QuickBooks account, and they used that to wire $24,000 out of his account, which at the stage he is, devastating.
Yes.
Devastating. Luckily, he was able to catch it. We had a discussion, but that is a very specific thing that people don't think about. And what they think is they think, who I'm so small, who cares about me? Who would be trying to steal from me? And unfortunately, a lot of people. Some are nation states. Some put a lot of software and technology as well as human capability to basically break into anything they can. In some foreign intelligence communities, they're actually like rewards, like they put them on quotas. How many places can you break into? And a lot of the places that they break into, they just have a back door. They actually don't do anything. They siphon off all the data. They keep an open door into it for maybe one day, someday it might be useful. So there's that. Organized crime has made an absolute business out of it, siphoning money. A lot easier for organized crime to move money with zeros and one through cyber and the virtual world versus the way that they used to have to strong arm or rob a bank or what have you. It's a lot easier. It's also harder to prosecute when actually you're found out, especially if you're in a country that doesn't have good relations with the Department of Justice. And so yeah, that's a real risk that I think most entrepreneurs, well, first of all, in order to be an entrepreneur, you have to be a risk taker. You also have to be overly optimistic, and you're probably absolutely consumed about the one idea that you are trying to bring to market and change the world and be disruptive and everything else. And so you hear IT secure, how much does that cost? We don't have that money. I can't do that. And by the way, nobody knows who I am.
Yeah.
It won't matter.
Yep.
And I would say when I was working at Torchstone, had a lot of conversations with, startup companies that were kind of heading towards unicorn status, heading towards IPOs and things like that. And oftentimes through our relationships and our contacts, we would be introduced to a founder like that, kind of at that stage. And 15 years ago, those founders would be like, oh, you're a fear monger. That's not going to happen. What have you? What I can tell you is with generative AI and all the new technology and all the things that are available out there, the democratization of cybercrime, if you will, like everyone's a potential target. And if you want to even take it one step further, we were talking earlier about, the evil in the world.
Yep.
Some of those syndicates and some of those organized crimes are actually now using human trafficking. So some of those sweatshops, say in Nigeria or Bangladesh or Indonesia, that's actually slave labor. And so if you think about some of the anonymous messages you get, like I have a, invest in crypto here and you can get 1,000% return, or some of the others that are like, hey, I haven't heard from you in a long time. Is this still your number? Like those kind of like WhatsApp single or SMS text messaging. Unfortunately, because of the evil in the world, sometimes those are people that are actually in slavery, and they're just in a digital sweatshop trying to siphon whatever money they can.
That's terrible. I know that's a passion for your heart, which I'd love to kind of hear more about what's being done in your world for that. Just not to move past it too quick, but I'm a business owner. A lot of the people you're speaking to here, they're owning businesses, trying to grow them. There's a lot of people that promise security out there. There's a lot of companies that do cybersecurity. There's people that, do this kind of enterprise risk management. Can you give me a frame for what size companies should be looking for what level of investment on an annual basis? I know there's a lot of industry dependencies and all sorts of things, but like, hey, if I'm a business owner and I'm serious about this enterprise, I should probably be allocating blank towards just basic, let's call it just cyber online risk management. Say that you do things that are predominantly digital.
I would hesitate to put a number on it, right? On such kind of like a broad vertical to vertical question. I would say that if you have two things. One, you can't protect everything, okay? So decide and again, this gets back to like, what's the differentiator, right? Like I don't bring smoke and mirrors. I just bring the truth. And I'm oftentimes, when people ask me questions like this, I'm trying to provide no cost, low cost solutions, right? Because I live in the real world, not the world where you can just, as an entrepreneur, just wave a magic wand and find 50,000 extra, dollars for discretionary spend on IT security.
Right.
So number one, decide what is of value and what is not, right? What if it was lost, right? So obviously,
your website, for example, if you're selling to,
like your website, if you're actually doing e-commerce through your website, right? If that goes down on a denial of service attack or some sort of a malware or whatever, and your customers can't find you, I mean, that's, in this world of instant gratification that we live in, like that's death to a startup, a small business. But also, your money. How is your money? Is it connected? Have you gone into the app integration and connected your QuickBooks account to 50 different other applications? Well, guess what? Every one of those apps that you sync QuickBooks with is another vector by which somebody could actually get into your bank account, right? Get through into QuickBooks and start getting control of your bank account, possibly even get into your bank account, right? So like, obviously, like, the money's important. Do you have any intellectual property? Do you have client lists, right? Start segmenting out what would devastate your company if it was leaked or broken or no longer available, versus what, in a weekend we could redo that with no problem, right? So number one, separate it out. Number two, find a reputable company. And so how do you do that? You put out an RFP. You get multiple bids. You meet with all of them. Do you know what I mean? You ask them the right questions, like, How many employees do you have? How much do you subcontract? Do you subcontract overseas? Where do you subcontract overseas? Why do you do it that way? Like, all entrepreneurs, I said earlier, are risk takers and optimistic, and they're obsessed. They're also smart people.
Yeah.
So take some of that,
Yep.
intellect that the Lord gave you
That's right.
and apply it to a really, really important vendor. That's not just a help desk and not just email support, but actually could, if left unguarded, and then with 3-4 bids, you're going to find out what it's worth and what's reasonable.
Yeah. I love that. It's so practical and tangible. And as I'm building a business, and a lot of our, fellows are and entrepreneurs are, that's exactly what they need to be doing.
Yeah.
Reverse back a quick second. You touched on human trafficking
Sure.
and the role that plays in some of these, kind of digital scams, but then the larger human trafficking challenge.
Mm-hmm.
How did you come to care about it, and what are you doing?
Sure. One of the venture capital companies, one of the venture capital firms that's invested in a couple of my businesses, asked me to come to Dallas back in 2022 to attend this seminar on human trafficking. And the reason was because they were feeling called. They are Kingdom Impact investors, and they were feeling called by the Lord that there's this problem of human trafficking and modern day slavery, as well as human exploitation, that seems to be growing and seems to be getting worse, not better. And they invite me to this thing, and I went to it. And at the time, I didn't really know that this was a problem. This was only a couple of years ago, but I didn't know this was a problem. I wasn't educated about it. Mm-hmm. And I went and I saw some statistics, and I heard some stories, and first I was shocked. Shock quickly turned into kind of guilt and shame, to say, how could I not be aware that all of this is happening, and not just happening like overseas or in some other country, but it's actually happening here in our major cities and a lot of our rural communities as well. And so that was kind of my day, and it ended with shame and guilt. And then the Lord, without going into too many details, overnight, the Lord just kind of put something on my heart, convicted me, and kind of said, what are you going to do about it? And I'll be honest with you, that's 4 years ago now, and I'm still trying to figure out what I'm going to do about it. But I do know that the Lord put it on my heart, and I can't let it go. And I'm trying to take step by step and figure out what to do about it. I can tell you some of the things that I've done thus far, but I don't think I've been very effective. I'm still searching for a way to be effective in this fight. But yeah, that's how it came about.
Okay, thank you for sharing. What have you done so far? So,
in one of the companies that I'm involved in, it is a data and research company. And at its core, what it does is it pulls unstructured data out of emerging and edge markets. There's a lot more to it. It's a hybrid model of both data, now data with AI on top of it, plus on the ground researchers to get to the real sources of truth of what's going on in difficult jurisdictions. Sometimes where the information is still analog. Example is Brazil, where corporate records are in filing cabinets. There is no repository of corporate records in Brazil. They're all in filing cabinets. So there are lots of other examples. But
so you have boots on the ground. They're actually going in, documenting the data. Yeah.
So knowing where the sources of truth are.
Yep.
And again, this is all kind of like commercial collection in support of capital and business.
Yep.
So coming out of the seminar, the conference on human trafficking, and saying, well, what could we do about it? That company leaned very heavily into global supply chain transparency. And so what happens is that let's just take, not a client, SEC, publicly traded company, Walmart. You can go to their filings and find out that Walmart has over 100,000 vendors in their procurement system. So that's tier one.
Yep.
100,000. How many how many contractors do those 100,000 have? How many subcontractors do those have? You go out like 3, 4, 5 levels, and all of a sudden you're in the millions, tens of millions, even hundreds of millions in this great big complicated web that we call the global economy. And so organized crime and syndicates, and sometimes even nation states, realize how complicated that all is. And so nefarious and evil actors hide out in the nooks and crannies of the global economy. And what they do is siphon off legitimate dollars for bad purposes. Sometimes it's money laundering, gun running, narcotics. Sometimes it's human trafficking. And so that is something that company, Evidentity, has spent a lot of time trying to work to increase global supply chain transparency. We did a project last year in the DRC, Democratic Republic of Congo, looking at tantalum. Have you ever heard of tantalum?
No.
Most people haven't. But if you have a smartphone on you, you have tantalum on you. You have an electronic vehicle, you have tantalum in that engine.
It's a material.
Tantalum is a mineral or a metal that allows an enormous amount of conducting, staying cool, right? So it's like cobalt or nickel or
copper.
Platinum, copper, to a certain degree. But these are in kind of our new world of GMUs and AI and smartphones,
ultra fast connectivity at a
and basically it's why oftentimes you'll hear the expression that your smartphone has more computing power than the computers that sent a man to the moon, right? And you're holding it in, and well, why is that? Because back then they weren't using things like tantalum and nickel and cobalt, and so you had to have huge cooling systems and large warehouses of computers to basically do all that processing without lighting on fire. So without tantalum, your smartphone, as you're surfing the web, would actually light on fire because it would get so hot from all of that processing. So we did a study. So the problem with the DRC, especially with the conflict with Rwanda and all the problems there, is that they have slave labor, and it's been well documented that the mines in the DRC have slave labor. And then what happens is that tantalum is shipped out to a refinery, and it's mixed in with tantalum that's not coming from slave labor, except on the back end, it's like, well, how can you tell, Right. And so we did a study. We worked, the U.S. Chamber of Commerce worked with us on it. A lot of institutional investment groups worked with us as well, and basically found a trail of slave labor to over 100 companies on the S&P 500.
Wow.
And about 21 of them really badly.
Wow. And so this is something that they're not going to be spending extra time and energy double clicking into themselves. They don't have the expertise. They're just like, hey, our supply chain goes this far in our minds and you guys expose this area. Now, hey, you guys should do something about it. Is that kind of the impetus?
Yeah, there's, there are a couple of different ways that we're trying to go about it. We are not trying to go the shame and blame route. So you'll notice I didn't mention any of those companies' names, right. And I won't. We are trying to work with the companies to get better. And ultimately there is a lot of the work and a lot of the money that's being spent is on mapping global supply chains and using AI to do it. And that's great. It's needed work and it's necessary and it's wonderful. But the model is that everybody's using is as business people and entrepreneurs, I completely get it. You go where the money is. right? So they go to the Fortune 500
Yep.
or the Global 1000, and they say, let me start with you, and I will work out and map your global supply chain, and we'll make sure that you get a clean bill of health. Great work, good work. I have no problem with that work. The issue is that, again, we're in Chicago. So if we went out with the Chicago PD, right, and just went out with a couple of beat cops, I'm sure they could drive us around and point out, it's like fentanyl is being sold out of that house. That's the house where the prostitution's happening, right?
Mm-hmm.
There's illegal gambling going on over there. The beat cop knows where it is. Mm-hmm. So our whole methodology is go to the ground, get the ground truth, and then work your way back. Yep. And so we are the most traction we're getting is actually with the institutional investors and financial groups, because they're getting more and more questions about human trafficking from their large clients.
Right. Right. So the general awareness around human trafficking is bubbling up to, it's like, the corporations feel like they need to have a stance on social things. And this is a critical in your face,
And having lived in that world and knowing that when you're a financial advisor to a billionaire and you're having your semi-annual meeting, right? The thing that most is on their mind is like, I hope I don't lose this client today. That's what the financial advisor is thinking about, right? Mm-hmm. And so if that billionaire walks in and says, can you guarantee that my portfolio has no human trafficking in it? That's why the financial institutions are like, that's where we're getting the most traction.
Yes.
Because they're getting those questions more and more from their clients. And if it's you or me walking in, they're probably like, yeah, sure, you're fine. But if it's a billionaire and they're worried about that they're going to take their money over to the competition.
Well, I love it because it's well, not obviously it's a terrible fallen challenge that we're facing as humans who are trying to redeem our brothers and sisters and bring them out of this state. But it's a way to use the real human motivations of business and leverage them for good. Yeah. And you're saying, hey, this is a mechanism that works. This is a relationship that's there. This is data that we have. We're going to be using smart, ways to be engineering our data and make it usable, and AI layers on top of that and get to, a narrative that can be bubbled up and presented in such a way that a, financial advisor to their client can give a clear yes or no to that.
And that, the venture capital group that introduced me to all of this, and now is invested in a couple of different my companies. They had already invested in Evidentity, but have since invested in another company that I'm at this point now tangentially involved in. That's their whole hypothesis. Their hypothesis is, and we could talk about like why human trafficking and human slavery has gotten so bad. We've already touched on one of them, which has to do with the complexities of the global economy. Another couple reasons are in order to enslave someone or traffic someone, you have to have accessibility. And if you think, 100 years ago, if you wanted to, try to enslave a young boy or a young girl, you would actually have to get close to them. Well, now with social media, you can get very close to them, and they can be up in their bedroom with their parents downstairs, not realizing that they're being contacted, potentially groomed over time. So accessibility has gone through the roof, which makes it much easier and safer to try to groom and separate people. And then the other thing is vulnerability. And so we live in a time where mental health is off the charts, depression is off the charts, people feeling isolated and disconnected is off the charts. And so, there are just three reasons of increased accessibility, increased vulnerability, and the complexity of the global economy, where people are saying like, I think everything's okay, but it is, right? And those three things, and that's why like the UN estimates that currently there are about 50 million people in some form of modern slavery today. And that is, percentage-wise, that's not the largest it's ever been. I mean, slavery has been part of almost every culture since the beginning of time, and used to be a lot more accessible and a lot more prevalent than it is today. But But in terms of numbers of souls, like that's more at any given time in human history that have been trapped in some form of modern slavery or human trafficking. So,
man, it's convicting. Like hearing this and having a conversation with you, I've seen some of the statistics, but it makes you want to, do something.
And that's why the venture capital firm Eagle, that I've been lucky enough to be associated with for several years now, as well as then they brought in Tim Tebow, and Tim has a long history of fighting human exploitation in a lot of different forms. But and Tim is a general partner on a couple of Eagle's funds, and they've said something's very wrong here. It's bad and it's getting worse, and it's getting worse at an exponential rate. What can we do about it? And their whole thing is, well, let's use capital and for-profit business models to try to do something,
right?
Because what we currently are doing, we're losing, and we're losing badly,
right?
And so that's kind of their hypothesis in a couple of their funds.
I love it. It makes a ton of sense. And I'm curious, just in this world, and we're gonna switch gears in a second, but I'm curious. You're in this world of risk mitigation, fighting in the ways that you're best equipped, human trafficking. And yet on the same token, you mentioned entrepreneurs need kind of a rose-colored glasses in some ways. You need a sense of hope. So maybe what gives you hope, and what does your prayer life look like?
Well, I will tell you, a little tongue-in-cheek, but very true, that, spoiler alert, I read the end of the book, and I know how it ends, and the victory's already been won. But in all seriousness, some days that's all I have. I mean, that really is all I have. That, that ultimately the Lord will win, that the victory's already been won, and that it will unfold and happen in His time, not mine. So that is, I'm not always like that, but some days, yeah, there's some real evil in this world, and there's some horrible things happening, and some of them seem to be happening right in front of our faces, and I don't know if we've become numb to it, or I don't know, but yeah, my faith in the Lord and His plan give me hope. And then, so that's at a macro level. Let me take it down to a micro level. It's been an absolute blessing to this is Breaking the Barrier podcast, right?
That's right.
And I love that name because that's what happened in my life. When I started as an entrepreneur and then an entrepreneur, I had my faith, I had my Catholicism, I went to church every week, but it had nothing to do with my professional life. I was raised on the idea of the separation of church and business, right? It's like, you don't talk about those things. You don't do it. Now, that's not to say that now, today, all these years later, that I proselytize, right? Or try to convert people, my clients or my employees or anything else.
Sure.
But what I realized was that barrier was wrong, and it was artificial, and it's not what the Lord wanted, and He broke through that, and then all of a sudden you start to realize that every moment, every interaction, whether it has to do with your business or your family or your community, or you're grabbing a coffee, do you know what I mean? And having interaction with the person who's serving you, like every single moment. And so just to answer your question at a micro, like what gives me hope? I love being part of Sent. I love being part of this ecosystem, and I'm involved in other ecosystems as well. And to then have that community and those connections with other believers, and know that we're all playing the small part that our Lord doesn't need, but He wants, right? Like that gives me hope as
Praise,
well.
praise God. Just on let's just hang out with the breaking the barrier piece for a minute, because I think a lot of people get into entrepreneurship with a practical need. Hey, I have a skill set. I'd like to provide for my family in a wholesome way. I'd like to be my own boss. I'm sick of working for this big company. Pick your reason. And then the Lord kind of works on us slowly over time and starts to break down that wall. Do you have some pivotal moments for you that really took a chunk or a brick out of that wall?
Yeah, I've told some of these stories before, but I love to share the testimony. Hopefully in a not in a puff out my chest way, but in a humble way, in a helpful way. So what happened to me, one of my favorite expressions is, if you want to hear the Lord laugh, tell him your plans. So under that heading, let me just tell you a little narrative here. So I was working for that physical security company, Torchstone, and we made it through survival. And we actually,
which you were a founder of, so you've got decision making. Yeah,
we made it through survival, and we got to in 2015 we closed the deal that doubled the revenue of the company in a stroke of a pen, and that was a 14-month project to handle all security and a lot of the logistics at the Rio Games in 2016.
Wow.
For a top Olympic sponsor, right? And it really changed the company. So after being in survival mode for several years, and then spending that kind of like 15, 16-month period, whatever it was, working on the Olympics, I can actually remember getting on the plane in Rio after the Olympics were all done and talking to my partner and saying, for the first time in I don't know how many years, I feel like we can finally take a breath and really start thinking strategically about where we go from here. And he said, okay, that's a great idea. The problem is that my ideas did not jive with my partner's ideas. And what I was thinking was, I was like, look, I think we need to lean into technology. I think we need to lean into IP creation. We need to take some of the great work that we've done on a project basis, and we've got to figure out some way to like codify it, standardize it, figure out a way to actually create a product or service that can scale, right? And after a couple of years, because this is, leaving Rio in 2016, all the way to probably like almost 2018, my partners got really, really tired of me talking about these ideas. So when I finally got the hint that we weren't going to do any of that, I thought to myself, well, I need to go out and find something else. So getting back to the breaking the barrier part and the pivotal moment, what happened was I said, I thought I was in search of more revenue, more intellectual property, a higher EBITDA multiple. Do you know what I mean? Like that's, those were my plans.
That's
and
I'm
sure God just was laughing at me. He goes, yeah. No, that's a good idea. You go
You're
down.
Speaking to the audience here. That's the world. The world tells you, hey, that's the track you should be on. What's your exit strategy?
God probably had a little smile on his face, and he said, yes, go down that path, because that path ultimately led me to my partner that I helped co-found Evidentity, right? And truth be told, he had actually started the company. He was a solo founder, but by 2018, he had gotten to a point where he hadn't been able to raise capital. So he had a company and it was working, but he had another company that was actually paying for everything. And Evidentity was just kind of here, and it was doing okay, but it wasn't doing great. And I won't bore you, the story's too long, but ultimately I said, you and I should go into business together with Evidentity.
And you saw the mission heart in it. And so you left a business that maybe like lacked part of the mission heart, and you found a partner that had it.
Yes. But here's where, I mean, God was always there, but here's where God like made his presence known, because I asked this individual to go into business together, which made absolutely no sense. There was no good reason. And instead of laughing me out of that conversation, he said, well, that's interesting. Tell me more. That led us on a 3-month process of he had me interview with a bunch of people. We got to know each other a little bit better. We started working on a memorandum of understanding and so on and so forth. And it all culminated about 3 months later, where he sits me down, he invites me over to his home. We're sitting in front of the fire, with fresh cups of coffee. And he says, 3 months ago, you said you wanted to go into business together. Here's the deal. I don't own the company, God does. And if you're not cool with that, we can't go into business together, right? Like 4 hours later, we agreed we were going to go into business together.
That's awesome.
And we started working together on Evidentity. But that's where the Lord made it very, and if I'm being completely honest with you, because I am not a saint. I know I'm called to be a saint, but I am not.
That's what we're doing here.
If you don't believe me, you can talk to my wife. But if I'm being completely honest with myself and with you and anybody else watching this, I said yes. It was an uncomfortable yes. Okay. That was back in 2018. Mm-hmm. So here we are 8 years later. It's not uncomfortable anymore. It's an absolute blessing. Yeah. It's an absolute godsend. But when I said in his, in front of his fire in his house, yes, it was an uncomfortable yes. It was a painful yes.
Yes.
But it was one of those times where you know what's right and wrong, and right is the harder path, but you have to take it. That's the feeling that I had.
It's a beautiful, thanks for sharing that. And it's a beautiful thing. We have this Jesus, I trust in you, Jesus, mm-hmm. I trust in you prayer. And when I first dedicated our business to the Lord, it was, oh man, am I ready for this? Do I want this? Can I do it? And then I was like, well, who else do I want in charge? Me? Well, no, not me. If that's the decision, as plain as can be, then definitely I want you, Lord. And do I trust in you? Do I, it's these little acts of faith that I think build greater acts of faith that actually bear fruit. So thank you for sharing that holy collision. Yeah. One of the things that just struck me in that story is, hey, this person had kind of a God first, faith-hearted, mission-minded business in the for-profit space.
Yep.
Redeeming this area with technology in a really creative way. Didn't have capital. I think people with capital sometimes think, oh yeah, good concepts will just find capital. Yeah. And it also works like capital needs to find good concepts, And so there's kind of both sides of it. So, and it's frequently in God's timing that takes place. And some of that we're trying to have happened through the Scent Network. But you've mentioned multiple times now having Eagle as a venture capital partner that's just like-hearted in how they're going about it. What are your hopes for the investment space over the coming years in these different areas of business? You get to coach fellows now. You get to be a part of business in so many different levels. Where do you hope that capital allocation shifts?
That's a big question. But the first thought goes to this movement of impact investing, right?
Some people aren't familiar. Yeah, just what's the?
Yeah, it's probably about 20 years old in plus or minus in the venture capital space. But this idea, born out of Silicon Valley, born out of things like Google. Google's original mission statement was, do no evil or do good. I can't remember exactly what. I'm not sure Alphabet still has that, but that
just like returns with impact to the world.
Right. And so that was it was kind of born out of that, and it was all about impact. And at some point, through places like Eagle, faith-driven investor, an entrepreneur, Lion's Den, Sovereign's Capital. All of a sudden, the impact got a descriptor, which was kingdom impact, and that seems to be right now a growing movement
Yes.
that I can really get behind.
Yes.
And I can, and so I hope that continues. I think that another shift that I'm seeing is that in kind of the post-World War II, postmodern world, a lot of faith, right, was put into institutions. So we put a lot of faith into government. We put a lot of faith into the UN. We put a lot of faith into these institutions that I don't think, perhaps well served us at certain points, but not at all points. And so I see capital starting to look at some of the problems of our age, be they human trafficking as one example that I'm involved in, but others around poverty or education or these different areas. And what I see is that capital as one piece, there are other pieces as well. I think there is philanthropy. I think there's the nonprofit world. There is the for-profit world. There's entrepreneurs and inventors, and they're kind of all coming together and saying the solutions of the past aren't working anymore. If they ever did,
Mm-hmm.
I guess we could argue about that. But
Mm-hmm.
but even if they ever did, they're not working anymore.
Yeah.
So how do we come together and start to deploy capital with more thought?
Yes.
Not just about, and even if you take the theology out of it, even if you take the Catholicism or the Christianity out of it, how do we deploy capital with real intention and real thought, and not just, well, we need to get a return. We need to get a return for the investors. We need to get a return for the shareholders. Like that is our sole purpose. That kind of unfettered capitalism, I don't think has worked very well. So I see some macro movements that make me hopeful, and that I hope will continue.
Yes. Well, I think you have a unique lens to it because you are close, with our Protestant brothers and sisters in these funds that have kind of blazed the trail for this kingdom impact.
Yeah.
Catholics are kind of late to the game here, right? I mean, I see a lot of I think if I was just playing this for lots of friends and family in our parish, they would say, well, I just kind of put my money in my 401k and park it. And you're over here saying that, hey, there could be dozens and dozens of companies that are indirectly supporting slave labor that are putting money into those Fortune 100 companies. Mm-hmm. And there's actually a more intentional allocation of resources that can be put towards companies that still give you a great return, that are redeeming industries. Mm-hmm. It takes a little more work, but at some point, what's a better use of time than allocating capital in the right places that has kingdom impact? Yeah. It's pretty high ROI. Yeah, return on investment and on souls.
And I just want to kind of just make a little footnote there, is that I don't believe, I don't believe any of those companies intend to be doing that, right? It's only a sociopath would wake up and say, I can't wait to get to work today so that I can, sign those checks that are going to lead to human suffering halfway around the world.
Right.
But I do see an awakening, and people saying we can do better than this, and we should do better than this.
Yes. And with that awakening, if you had every Catholic in the United States look at their retirement portfolio and basically ask the hard questions that you have the, financial advisor asking the billionaire, hey, what's represented in my portfolio? I mean, there's groups right now in Cent that like Arimathea and others.
And I know Dan, and I know Jimmy as well.
Yeah.
And I'm very excited about the work that they're doing.
Right. And that gives me hope as well. I see these kind of worlds coming, and I'm like, hey, let's join our Protestant brothers and sisters in this one, and let's make an impact with our dollars. Yeah. So I thanks for bringing that up. It gets me excited as well. Sure. I know we've only got a little bit more time here, so I wanted to kind of shift gears if I could for a minute. And I'd like to hit a little bit on some personal habits that you have, and personal habits you see as being essential for entrepreneurship. What are some habits that you have developed as an entrepreneur that keep your life rightly ordered? What does your rule of life look like?
So, number one, you have to. We were talking, or I was talking with some other people earlier about the theology of the body, and the longest distance in the world is between the head and the heart, right? So I'm going to say something that everybody intellectually is going to get, but you have to actually get it into your heart, and I struggle with it all the time. But put things in the right order, right? It starts with God, it starts with Jesus Christ. If that is not at the height of your existence, your identity, why you get up in the morning, like, if anything else is higher than that, you're going to run into problems. So number one, just a priority. So then after that, right, what comes next? Could be your family, if somebody's married with children, right? So where does your business fall into all of that? And I think
in a practical time allocation.
Well, yeah, Matthew Kelly from Dynamic Catholic has a great saying, which is that if you want to show me what's important to you, show me your calendar. Where do you spend your time? Because it's real easy to say that your wife is the most important, but show me your calendar. How much dedicated time do you have with your spouse, your husband or wife? Oh, your children are so important to you? Like, when was the last time that you spent one-on-one time with them? So get that priority list right and solid, and then when your calendar reflects that priority list, then it's gone from here to here. So that's one habit. Daily prayer is essential. Not to go too far down this rabbit hole, but
it's an important rabbit hole to go down.
Well, spiritual warfare, right? I'm a believer in it. I believe it's very, very real. I will tell you that since I got involved in trying to do something about human trafficking, it's become very real in my life. There's been some weird things that have happened to me over the last couple of years, and to my family as well. Daily prayer is essential. I'm not going to tell anybody like what that should look like. And also it should probably change based on the season that you're in. Right now it might be the rosary once a day. Next year it might be Father Mike Schmitz and the Catechism in a year, right? The next year it would be something else. And that's one of the incredible things about Catholicism is that we have such a rich tradition. The tradition, the magisterium, like the Catechism, there's nothing new to learn about Christianity that you can't find somewhere in the life of the saints or in the Catechism, or like it's
rich.
It's all there. Yeah. It's all there. So go out, seek it, find it, but do something every day. So those are kind of two places my mind went.
That's thanks for sharing. And as you're coaching entrepreneurs, I guess what habits do you, those same habits, I guess you'd ask them, rightly priority life, what habits would you hope that they bring into their business to kind of break that barrier between their personal faith and their spirituality and their work? What are some habits that you've seen successful entrepreneurs to kind of break that barrier?
One of the things is we're called to be praying, all the time. And that's really hard, right? We're not monks. We're not in a religious order. We're business people. We're husbands, wives, fathers, mothers, community leaders, etc. I often tell people to think about this in every moment of their life that they can. Doesn't matter if you're with a client or an employee or an investor or a partner or a spouse or a child or a friend. What are the fruits of the Spirit? is that what's in your mind? Is that what's in your heart, right? The fruits of the Spirit, joy, kindness, gentleness, peace, right? So no matter where you are, if that's not what's in your mind and your heart, then what's there? Because if it's not of the Spirit, if it's not of God, you're in a bad place. And so that's a way that you can break it down, because what people do is they compartmentalize, and they say, okay, I did my daily prayer, I grounded myself in the truth and in Jesus Christ. Now I'm going to put that aside and I'm going to go off with my day, right? And by the end of the day, and if they do an examine of conscience at the end of the day, and they say, why did I say that to that person? Why did I treat my wife like that? Why did I yell at my child? Right? And you can't compartmentalize. And so one of the ways that's worked for me, and that I encourage others to do, is that in every moment that you can, and it doesn't happen all the time, but in every moment that you can think of, wait a minute, what's in my heart? What's in my mind? And if it's not of the Spirit, get rid of it as best as you can.
Thank you. No, thank you. Sure. We're coming on time here.
These people want to go home.
These people, they love us. They're a great crew, but they do need to get home. We're going to end with some rapid fire questions, and then one final closing question. But these are just quick ones. Would love your agree, disagree. This is common wisdom. Okay. People.
What if I get them wrong?
You can. That's fine. That's part of the game. It's great. Agree or disagree? Time is money.
Disagree.
Why?
Time is the only commodity that is limited, and nobody knows how much we have, right? If we knew the hour that the master was to return, we would have stayed up, right? So, money in and of itself is not evil. Mammon is evil. Money is not. Money can be used for good or it can be used for bad. But to equate it to time, I think, is a misunderstanding.
Great. It's great. You can't move what you can't measure.
Well, I do own a technology data company, so
you can measure a lot.
So I kind of feel like my partners and my investors might get upset if they hear me saying I disagree with that. Yeah. So I do agree, but I will say this, which is that don't allow data to overcome the human being. Don't allow data or metrics or KPIs to overcome the relationship. Again, in and of itself, data is not bad. KPIs are not bad. Metrics are not bad. They can be very good. They can be very useful. They can be very powerful, unless you start putting them over people.
That's so interesting. Just for a riff for a second, AI is on a lot of people's minds and will be for a while. It's changing the way lots of industries are run and decisions are made. What are your hopes for how Catholic entrepreneurs thoughtfully engage with AI?
I think AI is a tool. It's a different kind of tool, unique kind of tool. But in some ways, just the next step in an evolution of where we're heading. An example I like to give is Excel. Right, as an old, like now, that's an old technology, right? But there's a great scene in Apollo 13 where Tom Hanks is doing a calculation, right, up in space, and then is tired and dehydrated and sleep deprived and everything else, and he's like, hey, somebody's got to check my math here, right? And so all of a sudden, everybody stops what they're doing, and 8 different engineers all take out their slide rules, right? And they're all checking his calculations and making sure that they're right. And everybody's like, go flight, go flight, go flight. And now we just use Excel, right? Nobody, when was the last time that you put a formula into Excel and said, Does 2 plus 2 really equal 4? Maybe I should check that on my slide rule or do my own calculation. And so it's a new tool in an evolution of tools. It can be used for good. It can be used for bad. But don't ignore it. Don't be a Luddite, because it's here and it's growing and it's coming. And we need more good people in it and focused on it and working on it. Because if good people just turn away from it and say, well, then the only people who are going to be working on it and developing it are people that don't necessarily agree with our worldview. And that's not what we need at all.
Yeah. Thanks for sharing. I needed to shift gears to that because it was, hot on my mind. Couple more rapid fires and then the last question. So as innovators, we need to move fast and break things. Agree or disagree?
Disagree. Yeah, I disagree. I think that very easily can work against you. I mean, sometimes, as innovators, you sometimes you do need to be disruptive. You need to break things, but just having that be your mantra sounds like a recipe for disaster.
Mm. People are our greatest asset.
Agree. Yeah, we're all created in the image of the King of the universe and the creator of everything, visible and invisible. Yeah, I think people are our greatest asset.
I love that. One of the things that I've been reflecting on is actually from an article that I read. I believe it was in First Things, and it was saying that our businesses or that our platforms should become altars. And so I'd be curious. This is just in closing here. Do you agree? And how do you see, if you do, business as a potential altar for the Lord, a place where we sacrifice, a place where we offer up who we are and what we do? Have you seen that become true, or what do you think about that?
My own personal feeling.
Yeah.
This is a new concept to me. I've never heard this before. My own personal feeling is like, let's keep the altar like where it should be. Let's not. I don't know. It to me.
Yeah. On first blush, you're like, hey.
Yeah. To me, it just sounds like what's the next step? Like to all of a sudden we're worshiping at the altar of our business. I just don't like where that's going. Let's keep the altar where it should be, where where the Lord gives Himself to us over and over and over again. Let's keep that as our altar. The Lord doesn't need our businesses.
Yeah.
He's perfect. He was perfect before He created any of this, right? Like He doesn't need any of that. So let's keep the altar where I think it belongs. And look, businesses can be wonderful things, do good in the world, everything else. But yeah.
I love it. No, thank you. For the entrepreneurs who are listening, who are building businesses, any final words of encouragement? I know if you're in the thick of things, you're thinking about payroll, you're thinking about how to be moving and shaking, and the world can be dark at times. Any words of encouragement or hope that you'd give to the people listening?
It is, if you're truly an entrepreneur, right, then you love all of it, right? You love the upside, you love the downside. There are a lot of people that I've met over the years that sometimes need to be encouraged not to become entrepreneurs, because what's drawing them to it is the upside, right? But man, we learn so much in the downside, so much about ourselves, so much about our business models, so much about the marketplace, right? Where all of a sudden we're like, hey, we've got the best thing since sliced bread. And the market's like, nope. You're like, pivot. How do we pivot? So yeah, like no matter where you are, if you're on the roller coaster of entrepreneurship, you're on the upside, you're on the downside. I'm not saying that downside is easy, but lean into it, love it. Learn from your failures, get better, iterate again and again and again, and you'll be back to the upside of it before you know it.
David, thank you so much for spending time, for diving in
Sure.
with me. And just for being a great part of our world.
Thank you. Appreciate it, Nick.
We hope you enjoyed that conversation with us. If you did, if you could hit like and subscribe, that helps us reach more entrepreneurs building businesses. And if you're an entrepreneur building a business, you want to check out centventures.com. Our team would love to meet you.